say hi to her?
That when we,
Fearless leader, Lauren Loyal.
Allie said this is incredible. I said, someone said an hour for children and no snacks, no iPads, no, what are we doing? What are we doing?
There's a crap.
It's like, it's done.
You guys have me a free pen.
I'm finished with my fifth
I
grade.
did, I saw that outside. I was like, I'm taking my things.
I gotta fill out this thing for the, I wanna win a basket.
They told me it was really nice. I said, yes.
Now, if they were the Oceanside Fire Department pen, I feel like I become a member now or something.
Oh, I got an entire
Are they good ones?
thing of them. They're
Oh,
really
wait,
good.
that's what I was
Oh,
gonna say. My mom's library.
We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes, guys, if you haven't already done so. We have these flyers over at the front, and I have some as well. If you haven't scanned the code already, get your name in. And then when we announce the raffles at the end of the night, your name will be submitted so that you have a chance to, win big. You got to be in it to win it.
You know when you reach the epitome of
Woo woo.
I'm trying to be like, oh, I'm like, someone's gonna call me. I know a bunch of people. They're gonna be like, don't you know? So I like went in, and then I stole. I wanted the pen, but I didn't want to steal the pen. I was like, I'm gonna. In my house, I'm
They
gonna
told me
throw
I
it.
could keep the pen.
They told me to keep it, and I left it. And then I texted Rachel, and I said, love the pen. By the way, I hope I don't steal the pen. And then all of a sudden, he was like,
No.
no.
Yeah, no, it's not.
That's exactly what it was.
Hit and a miss.
So then next thing you know, Riley came over like 2 days later. She goes, check Riley's pockets, and there was like 35 pens.
Yeah.
Oh my
It
god.
was
Oh my
amazing.
Why don't they just say, like, if anyone wants to come and object to Mike,
It's the
It's the
process.
process, yeah.
Yeah, it's the process.
but wasn't there like nobody else on
Still
the
the process,
Yeah.
babe. You gotta. I've probably done one
Doesn't
That'd be a bummer if we
But,
just-
look, if I didn't go to vote, I wouldn't know about the pen.
Next time he could write his own name in, and at
Yeah,
least
yeah.
say that he lost.
Yeah.
I
Dan
should-
Fink
I
ran, he
should run
did
against
lose.
him.
He got one
Oh,
vote.
he's fucking toast.
He voted for himself.
Wait until the joke's on you and you win. I know.
Oh
And
my
then
God,
now
imagine.
you're,
Fine.
We gotta nominate him for
I'm
something.
mistakes were made.
Yeah, I'm considering doing the pickup line, but I can't do it if I'm fire chief.
Babe, it's too late to be fire chief this year, so I think you can,
Actually, that would be encouraged.
you can commit to valet next year.
Yeah, safety first.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to worry about that stuff. I'm just gonna say.
I know all about safety from tiny town.
So do I.
All right, everyone, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to make sure that we're respecting everybody's time tonight. Joining us on a Monday evening. We know everyone's schedules are very busy, so once again, thank you so much for dedicating your time to being here tonight and learning about this very, very important topic. So we're so important to it's so important to have you here. It's so important to have you a part of the mission to make sure that we're keeping our community safe and our kids safe, and ultimately, what you will learn tonight, keeping you safe. We're so fortunate to have such a spectacular panel of speakers this evening. They're going to be sharing their individual knowledge and perspectives on the subject at hand. And also, we welcome you to ask your questions at the end of the panel. So whoever wants to ask a question, you can come right up front and fire away. And then everybody did register. Make sure that you did. If not, that's going to get your name in for the raffle. I would like to kick off by stating that whether we want to admit it or not, underage drinking is a controversial topic here in Oceanside and pretty much everywhere. And that being said, I would like for us all to take a moment and collectively agree that we will be treating each speaker, panelist, and each other with the utmost respect. There are many important pieces when it comes to this topic, and tonight we're going to be hearing from several different perspectives. We have enforcement, prevention, medical perspective, and what honestly really matters most, parents and students. Our vision for this evening is for everyone to leave with at least one new thought or perspective on this topic and consideration for themselves when it comes to underage drinking and the real risks that are associated with it each time that it is allowed in your home or made more accessible to our children. We are here to support, keyword being support, never, ever, ever judge parents and families to have open, ongoing conversations, agreements, exit strategies, and clear, consistent expectations when it comes to underage drinking and substance misuse. That being said, it is my honor to introduce our guest speaker to kick off this evening's discussion panel. Judy Vining is the Executive Director of Long Beach Aware, and prior to assuming that role, she served as the coordinator of the Long Beach Coalition to Prevent Underage Drinking. Ms. Vining served as the chair of the New York State Substance Abuse Prevention Task Force, is a member of ASAP Prevention Committee, and served on CATCA's Community-Based Participatory Research Advisory Board. She was the co-author of The Study to Prevent Teen Drinking Parties, published in Biomed Research International, led by Dr. Mark Wolfson of the Wake Forest School of Medicine. Ms. Vining and the Long Beach Coalition were pioneers in getting the first social host law passed in the state of New York in 2006. In 2007, the coalition's testimony at the Nassau County Legislature was instrumental in the passage of the county's social host legislation. Since then, there are 14 counties and 39 communities that have followed suit using the Long Beach prototype. Ms. Vining has presented at numerous conferences, including several CATCA National Leadership Forums, that Long Island Youth Safety Conference, and Enforcing Underage Drinking Laws National Conference. In 2013, Ms. Vining was awarded the Commissioner Lifetime Service Award for Prevention by OASIS Commissioner Arlene Gonzalez-Sanchez. Her prevention focus is on policy and messaging that the communities that send to our youth around the issues of underage drinking and other substance misuse. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Ms. Judy Vining.
I don't even know what to do after that introduction because I don't know who that person is. But whoever she is, she had a lot of help. Nobody does this alone. And if you look to the far left, you'll find the person who's been in it with me the longest, and that's Jack Radin. So if we're pioneers, we're pioneers together. But he's not standing in front of me, upstaging me, so that's a good thing for tonight. Had I known this would be on the screen, I would have come up with a more glamorous first slide. But here it is. I mean, this is it. We were the first city in the first community in the state of New York to pass a social host legislation. Sounds pretty impressive, but what does it mean? Let's see if I know how to work this. Okay, before we get there, the next year, Nassau County becomes the first county in the state to enact a social host legislation. And we got publicity for it. And the idea was that the law says it is illegal for you or your teenager to possess any alcohol, and it is a crime in Nassau County. I'm having trouble with this, probably because I'm too short. It is a crime in Nassau County for anyone to host a party where teens are allowed to drink. You no longer have to provide the alcohol in order to be held responsible. You simply have to allow it to take place on your property, which is what I just went through. But let's take a look at why this works. And one of my favorite quotes is this one, is that, as Einstein almost said, or said almost in these words, our communities are ideally situated to create and support the very behavior we're trying to change. And so when I talk about this, I talk about the community. I do not talk about parents. I do not talk about specific individuals. It is the responsibility of the entire community to make this work, to take responsibility. It does, in fact, take a village. So what does the law say? And honestly, had I been able to have my preference, I would have called it a teen party drinking ordinance, because it focuses on what it really is. We do not want anyone holding parties serving teens, period, end of discussion. And we need to use every tool that we have in our toolbox to make sure that doesn't happen. But these ordinances focus on adult behavior, and that really is the point. It is adult behavior. It addresses consumption in private homes. Parents or whoever is in charge, anyone 18 and over who is in charge of the premises, is held legally responsible. And in both Nassau County and in the city of Long Beach and many of the other communities, it is a criminal offense. It is not a civil offense. You can, of course, be held civilly responsible as well, because there are other laws that take care of that, and I think Jack will probably touch on that, so I'm not. But if you take what I said about Einstein and the culture that supports this, then let's take a look at what we need to change in our community cultures that would give us a better understanding and something to do. You know, so what do most adults and most community members say to each other? You know, we need to make them aware of the law and specifically of local data. How many people were given summonses or citations or arrested for having an underage drinking party? We need to, as a coalition, do our homework and have those numbers at our fingertips, the elevator speech, if you will. But you do hear, it's safer for my kids to drink at home. Do we really think that? You want to tell that to the parents of a young man who was holding an underage drinking party in his home in Rockville Center many years ago and was so drunk that he fell down the stairs backwards, broke his neck, and 2 weeks later his parents had to make that horrendous decision to stop life support. Unless you are sitting next to the person who is drinking, you have no clue. And then you hear, oh, well, come on, I did that. I drank in the beach. I drank in this park. I'm okay. Think about the people you grew up with. How many aren't? How many could have been better in terms of functioning in their lives? A lot of adults, not only parents, but adults in the community think that, you know, it's a rite of passage. Everybody drinks. Everybody doesn't drink. Kids don't all drink. So you need to know that. And you also need to talk to your law enforcement because they need to be convinced that they're not doing a kid a favor by letting them go. They're doing them a favor by stopping them now, earlier. So, how do we use social host to change a community and family norms? We keep talking about social host. We weave data and we weave it all into every media post we do. We make sure we mention it. We call it what it really is, a teenage drinking party. And the reason we do that is so that community members can relate to that. Who's in favor of kids drinking? You can't say you are, or almost impossible to say you are. So if you relate it that way until a social host ordinance, even though that's what we are talking about, that's the legal term, people get it better. And you need, as parents and even as neighbors, to make your expectations clear. What is okay with you and what is not, and what the consequences will be, either pro or con. And you need, as a coalition, as members of this community, you need to enlist partners. You need to talk everywhere you can and anywhere you can and talk about the facts, not the feelings, the facts. This is a legal and really almost a moral responsibility. We want our kids, not every kid that begins drinking at age 14 to 15, although statistics say if they do on a regular basis, and regular only being once or twice a month, they have a 40% higher risk, 40% higher risk of developing a problem with alcohol or any other addiction over their lifetime over kids who waited till after they were in their 20s. Use social media, use print media. Every place you have a chance, you talk about it. Talk about when enforcement happens. Talk about if somebody does get cited for serving or for having a party or for anything. Talk about it because you know what? If it's not in the papers and it's not talked about, it might as well not have happened. Nobody will know. And again, you know, speak truth to power. And the power we're talking about now is the community and is the parents, really. Not with pointing a blame finger, but with saying, you have more power than you think. On surveys, children, high school kids, middle school kids, tell us one of the reasons they do not drink or do not drink as much as some of their friends is because they do not want to disappoint their parents. Parents don't usually believe that. But in survey after survey, in state after state, that's what we hear. Believe it and use your power. And use it with facts. Talk about house parties. Speak at community organizations. Speak to PTA. If there are 3 people, talk to them. Make it clear what goes on at house parties. Make it clear the liability issue. And make it clear, because you're in Nassau County, it's a misdemeanor. That does not go away very easily. And then dispel some of the myths. This is not this benign, oh, isn't he cute? He's fell asleep and he's drunk, and so what? We can draw on his face. This is how kids really drink. And this is what's dangerous. This is binge drinking. This is drinking that can be a medical emergency. It can be lethal. You don't know. Whoops, there we go. But there is enforcement, and when there is enforcement and it's publicized, people take notice. And I don't need to read this to you because you can see it for yourself, but you've got parties of hundreds of kids with social media. That's what happens. They may start with 10, and you wind up with 400 people showing at your house. So in the law, there is something that says if the adult who owns the property, say, knows or has reason to know, they can also be held accountable, liable through the social host laws, as well as the child who's holding an 18-year-old or 19-year-old who's having the party. Having reason to know means, well, let's see, Saturday night you go into the city to see a show, okay? And you come back and it's kind of clear that something was going on in your house, and you talk to your kid and you say, you know, never again. And if the next time you go out, come back and that happened again, you had reason to know by the 3rd time you go out, and you will be held responsible and should be. So, what do we do? Where do we go from here? What do you walk out of here with tonight? What works? If you hear of a party, call the police. Give them all the information. Stop it before it starts. They will keep your confidentiality. Talk to your neighbors. These are all good kids. Our job as adults is to stop them. Their job as kids is to try. It's as simple as that. We've got to fulfill our role. Let your kids know exactly where you stand, what the family consequences are if they don't adhere to family rules. And every single one of you, I'm going to ask you a question before I say this. Can I see by a show of hands how many people keep their alcohol locked up in their house? Okay. Every single one of you, when you walk out of here tonight, go home and lock up your liquor. Period. You can do it. It's not a matter of trust. I can't tell you how many times I've been told that they kept the vodka in the freezer and it was full. Only it wasn't. It was full of water. That happens a lot. So even if you don't have a teenager, even if you have a neighbor, even if you have a babysitter, it's better to be safe than sorry, and it is not a matter of trust. Okay? It really is not. It's a matter of, well, when your child was 3 or 4, you locked up the cleaning supplies because they were tempting, and you knew they would try to get into them, and you knew it wasn't safe. Hello. Lock up your liquor. Same deal. While you're at it, lock up your prescription meds, too. And you can keep talking about social host. Loop it into everything and anything you can speak about. Let people know that you, as a parent, as a community member, as a caring person, want to help keep our youth safe so they get from here to there safely. And this is what my children tell me is going to be on my tombstone. Underage drinking and drinking parties are adult problems. Anywhere, everywhere. you have a child drinking, there has to be an adult involved, providing it, allowing it, selling it, or simply looking away. Don't be that adult. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy Vining. Another round of applause for Judy Vining, please. At this time, we're going to bring our nice little projector up, and we're going to invite all of our amazing panelists to the stage. While they're coming up, I'm going to give you a little brief background about who they are. We have Dr. David Newbert, who is the Director of Pre-Hospital Medicine at Mount Sinai South Nassau. He is board certified in emergency medicine and emergency medical services. He works with the community education team and teaches Stop the Bleed, CPR, first aid, and Narcan overdose prevention classes in the community. We also have Sarah Dowler. She has been the health teacher, coach, and club advisor in the Oceanside School District since 2001. She has 3 children, ages 11, 17, and 19. She helped establish the Oceanside Safe Coalition back in 2015 and currently sits on the board of the coalition. We have John Radin Jr., who is a retired lieutenant, Long Beach Police Department. John, or better known as Jack, is a retired police veteran and instructor with over 30 years of police training experience. He is a founding member of the Long Beach Coalition to Prevent Underage Drinking and has presented on underage prevention strategies at national law enforcement conferences throughout the country. Then we also have Katie, who is a senior at Oceanside High School with a passion for youth mental health advocacy. She's dedicated to raising awareness, reducing stigma, and creating supportive spaces for her peers. And then we don't know, okay. All right, so this is our wonderful panel. Can we give everybody a round of applause for being here? So I'm going to start off with a question for Dr. David Newbert. So as we're here to shed light on today, it's important for parents in the community to be aware of the consequences for hosting parties with alcohol for minors for many reasons, as it pertains to the consequences of social hosts, but also the physical and biological effects, both long-term and short-term, are important to note too. So would you mind sharing, in your professional opinion, what some of those long-term, short-term effects are for minors if they do engage in underage drinking?
Sure. This on? Cool.
Yes.
All right, awesome. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Thanks for coming. So, this is really important. I mean, obviously, I'm kind of looking at it from the medical perspective. But the slide that she was showing with the kids binge drinking, that's obviously a problem and a concern. And most of the time, if there's drinking, especially at a party, it is occurring as binge drinking, meaning that they're drinking a whole lot, a large volume of alcohol at a time. So it's not like where most of us as adults, like, if you go to dinner, you'll have a single drink. The goal is not to get intoxicated. When you're binge drinking, the goal is intoxication. The goal is excess. It's not moderation. And that brings up lots of issues because it's often hard to figure out, where your boundaries are when you're doing that. And then, like she was mentioning during her talk at the beginning, there's this risk of injury, right? So, the brains of teenagers and young adults don't fully develop until the mid-20s, usually around 25. So the part of the brain that impulse control, the front part of your brain, isn't fully developed either. So there's already an issue with impulse control. And then if you put alcohol on top of that, then you're going to have risk-taking behaviors. And like you were mentioning, you could fall down the stairs. You could have, you could be in traffic. You could be driving and crash into something. And there's lots of really sad stories of people driving intoxicated and killing their friends in car crashes. I've been witness to that, sadly, as an emergency doctor over the years. So I mean that clearly is a problem. And then everyone thinks about quote unquote alcohol poisoning. What that really means is that you've drank too much alcohol to protect yourself, to maintain safety. And then usually it's to the point of unconsciousness or semi-consciousness. And obviously, if people vomit in that situation because they can't maintain their airway, they could end up aspirating, getting vomit into their lungs, which could cause serious damage. Or they could stop breathing if they're in a certain position and they block off their breathing and they're not able to recognize that. So there's lots of short-term dangers in this type of drinking behavior. And especially if there's adults and they're not supervising or there, as you were mentioning, to intervene and you get to this point, then it's a significant danger to the people. Long term, there's dependence is an issue. So alcohol use disorder, It runs in families, just like substance use disorder. It's genetic, so there's a predisposition in about 15 to 20% of the population, and you have to be exposed to alcohol for that to lead to a problem. So if there is no exposure, even if you have the genetic predisposition, you won't have an alcohol use disorder issue. But any exposure, especially binge exposure or long-term exposure, if you have that genetic risk factor, increases your chance of having alcohol use disorder. As I mentioned, the brain is still developing until the mid-20s, so alcohol can be very damaging neurologically to a developing brain. Cancers, there's all sorts of cancers. I know that you see some of the literature and it says a couple drinks are fine, but legitimately the newest literature says mouth cancers, stomach cancer, tongue cancer, and even other cancers like lung and gut cancers that you wouldn't necessarily associate with alcohol. There's an increased risk of all of those. And then finally, there's the gateway drug issue, right? So you're doing alcohol and then you're exposing yourself to tobacco or to vaping, which is a huge problem because of the high nicotine count, or THC gummies. That's a big thing now in the ER. I got to tell you the number of people coming in because they take gummies, which you can now buy legally, and their marijuana or the THC content is so high, it causes them to have panic attacks and to vomiting and all these crazy things. So that's kind of just a little bit of the overview to your question of the medical issues with this, and I mean we could talk more about other stuff also. But
We could talk about that forever,
Yeah,
sadly. But as a specialist in emergency medicine, do you think that there are certain times a year where you see spikes in the emergency room here in Oceanside?
yeah, so I'm a night doctor, so I work typically Thursday and Friday nights. Been a night doctor for like 15, 16 years, so I see a lot of this, a lot of overdoses. Alcohol is a huge problem. Probably on a regular night at the hospital, I see between 5 and 10 people, alcohol or other doses, other drugs as overdoses. So I mean, it's actually a lot more common than people would think. And usually it's holidays, it's weekends, it's nights, it's the summertime, it's when there's nothing else going on, and either parties are happening or sporting events. One of my worst ER nights in Philly. I was in Philly for 10 years. The Eagles, the Flyers, and I think their baseball team. Sorry, I'm blank. The Phillies, thank you. They all played in the same night, and they all lost. And I just had this huge influx of intox and fights breaking out, and I was like, what is going on tonight? And they're like, oh, everyone lost their games. I'm like, they need to tell me these things before I go to work. It was just an absolutely atrocious night. So that's typically
Philly.
Yeah, that's typically. They're very passionate.
Apparently.
Very passionate about their sports.
Win or lose.
Yeah, exactly. Win or lose, yes.
Thank you. So our next question is for Ms. Sarah Dowler. As a parent and educator and prevention activist, why do you think social host is so difficult for parents to follow, or why this is an issue in Oceanside and beyond?
Hopefully, yeah, it works. I mean, again, having kids in a similar age range, it seems like the kids that are out drinking are the kids that are having fun, or the kids that are popular, or the kids that are doing things. And really what I see a big issue too is the mental health struggles that our kids face. So you want your kids to fit in, you want your kids to have friends, you want them to be able to go out and have fun, but it seems like a lot of these events revolve around alcohol. So then you're left with kids at home that are upset, that are anxious, that are sad, and what would you prefer? And I've seen plenty of my own kids, friends, parents, rather them go out and drink and be social than be at home and be, in their head and their own mental health struggles. So I think that's a big piece, is wanting their kids to fit in and have friends, and that's what we're seeing in our community with a lot of parents and families.
Absolutely.
If
What
I may, I just
absolutely. Go ahead.
one of the strategies that I've seen over the years is parents telling us, so we have curfews. Our kids are in by 10 or 11 o'clock, and unfortunately, in my experience, all that does is have them start drinking earlier. So, it's not a matter of just setting boundaries. You've got to be there. It's a matter of being present with your kids. You can't leave them out on your own. You go out and have a good time, you're leaving them at home, and they're going to have a good time. They're going to find a way to have a good time. And unfortunately, in our culture, in Oceanside, Long Beach, anywhere in Nassau County, alcohol is a very big factor in kids' weekends. And the only way that you're going to combat it is by being present. Somebody's got to be there. And when you leave the home alone, and Oceanside's a very affluent area, I'm sure most of your homes have cameras inside them. If you do this, go take a look and see what goes on in your home when you're not there, because it may be shocking to you to find out what's going on. When kids party in their homes, they do feel safer, they take more chances, they're risking more, they're drinking more, and understand also it only takes 2 drinks, whether it's a mixed drink, beer, wine, for anybody to have impaired judgment. And at these teenage years, those 2 drinks impair their judgment even more so. And these kids are making terrible decisions. And I'm the parent of 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls. And over the course of my lifetime with them, you know, I had to bring them out of some tough situations that they allowed themselves to get into. My boys more than my girls. But with that said, you know, I made a decision early on in my police career that I was going to take this path, especially when I had young children. And I wasn't always their friend. We didn't always get along. Sometimes you've got to be the parent. And that is where it's going to either, the road's going to fork, or you're just going to walk along with them and allow them to get away with things. And unfortunately, it may lead to a tragedy. Now, tragedies don't happen every weekend. We know that. Thank God for that. But in my experience, once again, I've seen some terrible things happen. And it doesn't always have to be a tragedy. You know, homes get destroyed, vandalized. Girls get sexually assaulted. You got to remember, you leave your home alone with these kids there, that's not just a home, that's a hotel. They're going to take advantage of any opportunity they can get sometimes. So, you know, you're setting yourself up for a lot of criminal activity and possibly a lot of liability on your part when you allow these things to happen. Sorry.
No, thank you, Joe. You answered almost every question I had for you, which is great. This is actually a really good segue for us to ask Katie. So Katie, from your perspective, do you think teens are aware of the parameters of the social host law? And is this something that concerns them? Why or why not?
Okay, I have some notes on my phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Smart girl.
Yeah. So as for awareness, I mean, I don't believe that teens know anything about the social host law except the fact that their parents could get in trouble. Anything about an older sibling in the house, anything of that sort, I don't think it really concerns them enough to stop the behavior or even like to steer away from having a party in their own house. From my own experience, I don't think teens fully understand the strictness even, knowing that adults can get in trouble, their parents can have serious consequences, and I don't think that teens would even care about the law, those who even know, unless they're at a party when alcohol is present. And it's not until they're at the party until the police show up that it's actually a concern of their own to who can leave the party the quickest, because they know there's a chance they can get in trouble, but they're not scared enough to not do the drinking in the first place,
Very good point. What do you think, Katie? What type of boundaries or emotional support do you think teens need from their families? Like, what do they need from their families in order to stray from, I guess, the urge to engage in substance use and underage drinking?
I mean, yeah, at least in this town, I know that there are certain houses and certain parents who are known to be the house. As you had actually mentioned previously, it's a huge deal to have the community together and close-knit as a whole. There can't be one person who's going to do it and let that person do it and everyone else keeps it a secret because they trust that parent that's enabling that behavior in and of itself. So I think it's a big deal just to have open conversations, have everyone understand the consequences of the law, the dangers for everyone involved, the parents, the children, neighbors, the community. And have like an open and honest space to talk about those things, because even like Ms. Dowler had said, I mean, there's a popularity aspect to it. Like, kids want to go and engage in that behavior, but like, is that really worth it to you? If you know what could happen, if you know, anything, the consequences, even just for yourself. Maybe kids are gonna be selfish and not care about their parents, but I mean, do you care about your own future? Like, how much would you rather have fun on one night or be able to enjoy the rest of your life. So, yeah.
Great points. And question for Sarah Dowler. As a parent yourself and also an educator, how do you address this with your kids at home and also your students if they come to you? And what advice would you give to a parent if they came to you? How do I talk to my kids about this?
I mean, personally, I don't need my kid to be the most popular one, and that's why both one is in college and one is a senior, and they've had one or two friends in high school, and they're social at school, and they're involved in a lot of things, but a weekend was with one of their friends, or we'd watch a family movie. They were the losers at home with us, and I mean, they weren't seen as that, but that's probably how people looked at them. But you know what? I rather that, and they are on such good paths to life, and they're happy, and they're already successful in what they're choosing to do. And I think parents just have to realize that, look at the whole life. Don't look at your couple years that you have in high school with your kids. To the most popular kids are the ones that you see years later. After 20 years of teaching, you don't really see, there's some obstacles. And I know we were talking about this all night, but the brain development and the research that shows you're more likely to have an addiction the younger you start is a big issue. And that's what I really focus on with my kids, is the science. It's not about your mom doesn't want you to drink. It's I want to keep you safe, and we have addiction in our family, and we point out if you wait just a little longer, you're a lot less likely to have a problem when you're older.
Thank you. As a teenager myself, my parents were always honest with me. There's my dad over there. But he was always honest with me. He told me the dangers. He told me the truth. He didn't treat me like a child. He treated me like a person, and he told me things how they were. And going 4 years of high school, graduating in 2 weeks, I made it all 4 years with friends and a fantastic experience, never having been a drinker or a partier myself. And I'm proud of that. And I had a great time. I had a great time in high school. My parents are like my best friends. I don't view them as the villain. I view them as people that care for me, and I have a safe space in my home, and I get to do fun things all the time. I do fun things every weekend. And just because there's no alcohol involved, I mean, I think my life is better off for that. I have no embarrassing moments that I had drunk in high school like half the rest of my grade does. I mean, I just have things to show for. And I feel like teens fear that, but at the end of the day, like, being someone who didn't do that, that's such a good thing at the end of it. Like how you said yourself, I mean, it's the rest of your life that matters more than the moment. There was tons of nights that I was probably scared and sad in high school that I wasn't the kid being invited to the football parties or going out and engaging in that or, whatever. But now I'm going to college, like with scholarships. I never had an issue. I have a great relationship with people around me. Like I have a good foundation for the rest of my life. And those little moments that would have maybe made me happy that one night was not worth it to risk all that is to come and all that I have now. So.
Good response, Katie. Yes, big round of applause for Katie.
One more thing to that, because you said, what do I tell my students? And what Judy said in her thing, that it's an adult problem, there's not much I could tell my students when other parents are allowing it. And it's a really tough thing, and as parents, we have to be those supportive people that are going to understand and create this community that is not going to allow this, so our kids could grow up healthy and thrive. And that's really, it's really tough. And a lot of what I do is just, I'm a counselor to my students when they're sad that they weren't at the party, and I try to make them feel better and tell them about my own kids and how they don't go to the parties. But it's really, we need to come together as adults and make it safer for our kids, where they're not going to be the outcast because their parents aren't hosting a party.
Absolutely.
Can I just add real quick?
Please.
So you don't know what you don't know, right? So I mean, the thing is that I work nights in an ER. My mom's like, I tell stories, and she's like, you should really write a book. And I'm like, but this is just like Thursday night. But this is like an everyday. But that's the point. Like I see this every day, and my colleagues see this every day. Like when something goes wrong, you come to my ER. Like that's how that works. So if nothing's going wrong around you, you get the false reassurance that this is safe and that nothing bad can happen.
Yes.
And it's only when something bad happens that suddenly is put into very clear reality the dangers of all of this stuff. So, I mean, obviously we all have stuff to talk about, and I haven't written my book yet. yet. But the point being that, you know, there's so many things that can go wrong. Like that's, and I think that's the point that people just don't conceptualize that. And then when it goes wrong, they're always so confused or like surprised. And meanwhile, the folks that see this all the time were like, well, you know, like this is what happens. And then, I mean, we do a lot of counseling, you know,
Oh, yeah.
obviously when people come through. And I mean, I had a kid one time that crashed a car, and most single car vehicle accidents, I'm sure from law enforcement, you can back me up on this, are either substance use related or that someone fell asleep or like a suicide attempt. I mean, it's, you know, one car accidents are typically not as common as just, I mean, you know, obviously you could look away and crash a car, but, and I knew the kid was probably taking something and he didn't admit it in front of his parents, so I waited till he went to the CAT scanner, and then I basically said, I know what happened here. I know that you were intoxicated on something. You could have died. You could have killed someone else. You need to understand this. And then he broke down and cried. And then he was much appreciative that I had that conversation with him. And I think, unfortunately, it's a conversation I've had a lot of times. But I mean, I think let's have that conversation here, and then you could tell your you know, hey, the ER doctor says this is not a good idea. He probably knows. So that's, I think that just as a perspective from
Yes.
from my side, that's super important.
Jack, you made a point the other day when we were talking, actually, very similar to that topic of it's not the frequency in which it happens, it's the fact of the risk that this does happen. And it may not happen every day, but it can happen every couple of months. Would you like to expound a little bit on that?
Well, I'll talk to the parents out there. You know, it's generational. When I was young, you know, if a guy drank a 6-pack, he was a heavy drinker. You know, and there were some guys that drank a 12-pack and maybe even more, and they're no longer with us. But now, different way of drinking. Everybody's drinking that way. Everybody's drinking, you know, the IPAs that are 8.5% alcohol, and you know, nobody serves 16-ounce or 12-ounce beers. Everything is supersized. Drinks, everybody pours heavy. So with that said, you know, it used to be the rare bird that drank that large amount, and unfortunately, you know, their lives were no better for it, and probably a lot shorter. But now it seems like maybe the majority of people are drinking that way, and it's really scary. So the frequency of these bad things happening are just going to go up, and that's something we should all be concerned about.
Absolutely. And would you like to share, are there any additional charges that hosts can find themselves facing if they're found guilty of hosting a party with underage patrons, especially if an underage minor leaves the premises, drives drunk, or injures themselves or another? What additional charges can parents face, Jack?
Well, if they are actually serving there, unlawfully dealing with a child is when somebody provides an alcohol beverage to someone who's underage. They could be charged with endangering the welfare of a child. You know, and when it comes to DWI, you know, facilitation of any kind of serious incident or accident where somebody's seriously hurt or killed, not only are there criminal ramifications, but that's a mistake you'll be paying for the rest of your life, because lawsuits, you know, that's the way that this society works. If somebody hurts my family, I'm going to get them. And if you don't go after them physically, you're going to go after them legally. And you're going to be tied up in a lawsuit and probably end up on the wrong end of the judgment. And that's something that you could lose everything for. There's a dram shop law in New York State where judges can take away your property immediately after you're found guilty in a civil proceeding. And that's specific to alcohol. So, you know, you're really rolling the dice when you allow these parties to take place in your home.
Thank you. And then one final question, I'm going to open it up just to the panel, whoever would like to answer this. What do you think is the most important takeaway from your individual standpoint that parents and guardians in the community should take away from today?
I'm going to jump in on that. It is to, just like the LIR says, if you see something, say something. It is all of our responsibilities. It belongs to all of us. The least effective prevention measure, and if there are teachers out here, and I'm sorry, Sarah, is individual education. It's not what moves the needle. What moves the needle societally is economics and stuff like that. not in our power. But the next is policy and laws that are upheld and enforced. So we can make the change. You just have to do it.
Judy used the metaphor earlier with cleaning fluids. I would like to present the one with somebody, a homeowner who has a pool in their yard and they don't fence it in, they don't lock it up, so that there's a potential for a young child that doesn't know how to swim drowning there. This is what people who host these types of events are pretty much doing. They're allowing these kids to possibly drown in alcohol by allowing free flow in their house, in their what's become a frat house, you know. And one time, if you get caught once, it's a slap on the wrist. I know that. It's a misdemeanor, it's a minor fine. But these places that, these homes that people turn into frat houses for whatever reason, maybe it's just a permissive parent or an absentee parent with some, you know, full tilt kids. If your house becomes that house, you're looking at possible jail time. The third offense for an underage drinking party, as Judy said, social hosting, third offense is up to a year in jail. So it can happen, and it can happen rather quickly, because once a house gets a reputation, I'm sure anybody that knows cops will tell you, you know, word travels fast, and we do go back in frequent places that give us trouble. I mean, that's part of what we do. That's why we live here, because we have a great police department. Nassau County is one of the safest counties, if not the safest county in the country. And there's a reason for that. When police officers find a problem, they don't just give the blind eye or, you know, think that addressing it on one occasion is going to solve the problem. It takes repeat visits, repeat enforcement, and fortunately that's what you get here. So if you are one of those homes, once again, that you've been caught once and you continue doing it, you're not fooling anybody. Word's going to get out.
Anybody else? No pressure.
Mine's quick. There's no safe amount of alcohol for anyone in any situation at any time. See,
That was pretty quick.
And for me, what I was going to say was getting the communities together as a whole to make it a conscious decision within a community totally eliminates the factor of feeling like you're missing out, because there is no one else doing it. There isn't one parent who's cool with it, and then I won't feel left out that I wasn't there if it just literally is not going on. Everyone is under the same mindset that is not okay. It's not just like some parents here and there, and like even if you can't right away get the community together as a whole, you know, thinking about like within friend groups or like even just within who your kid hangs out with, if you could like, you know, talk to their parents, establish that within this circle, let's just make it that's not a thing. Give them other activities, other outlets, or, you know, teach them that it's cool to not drink as much as it, like, you know, more than it is too. That could also kind of help to prevent some of the issues that are happening.
And as far as making that phone call to the police, you know, if we as parents wanted our kids to drink, we'd let them drink. They can drink in your home. The law allows that. But if your kid is drinking at somebody's house, it's probably because you don't condone it. But that parent that's there allowing that party is condoning it. They're allowing your kid to drink. And me personally, I have a big problem with that. I don't want somebody else making decisions for me and my child, allowing that impressionable, vulnerable child in their home where peer pressure and a condoning parent is now setting that kid up for a big problem. So, you know, don't hesitate calling on that person, because they're not doing your kid any favors.
Could I ask a question to Jack?
Yeah.
If parents have a group of kids that are hanging out and are unaware that they're drinking, are they still held liable because it's in their home and they're not checking on them?
Yes, you're supposed to be aware of what's going on in your home. That parent that locks himself up in their bedroom while the party goes on in the basement, is not immune from prosecution.
So
No,
Don't lock yourself
I
up.
thought that was the answer, but I think people need to know that.
I think Jack and I have been doing this together for too long because he stole my line. Always. But the real truth, you want to know what the community gets out of this? I really meant it when I said, you have so many activities that you sponsor. Talk about social host in every one of them, even ancillary. Make it familiar. Make it short, make it sweet, make it the elevator speech, but let people know they have the power to say no. And I agree with the doctor, there is absolutely zero amount of alcohol that's safe. You make, as an adult, a decision as to how much of a risk you want to take. That's it. And for you women out there, 20% of breast cancers related to alcohol. Think about that.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your responses. I'm going to open it up to the audience at this time. Does anybody have a question that they would like to pose? Yes, sir, in the back. Let's get you. You want to come all the way up? Yeah, over here. It should be. There you go.
Oh, it is on. Hi. Katie, you mentioned something, and you kind of stole my thunder, but I'm going to give you another chance to wow everybody in here. So you mentioned, Allie, that parents need to kind of support and not judge, and I was just wondering if everybody on the panel has some advice on how parents can kind of support each other, because my kids are younger, and I'm pretending like this isn't going to be an issue for years and years, but it's like right around the corner. So how can parents get together, support each other, so that we kind of stamp this out as parents of younger kids before one parent decides that they're going to stick their head up and be like, you know what, I'm going to be the cool house.
Can I answer that and just throw a wild card in here and just tell you a little bit of what
I mean, I'd like the experts to tell you, but
Sure.
I'm just getting out
I'll
of
give you a
this.
little bit more. Well,
Knock yourself out.
obviously we'll give it there. But I have young kids too. And I've started this conversation. Obviously, my daughter knows what I do. My daughter knows that I work in prevention, and she's been hearing everything, since she's 3 years old and she's able to talk. We have these conversations now. It's never too soon to start them, obviously, within the fashion that, whatever age your child is able to receive it and whatever is appropriate to have that. But I also have conversations with the parents of the individuals that I allow in my circle. So now that I'm seeing my daughters, opening up, where we live in a new town now, I'm meeting new people, I'm meeting their parents. I know these are going to be the parents that are going to be carrying with me for the next couple of years. I have these conversations with the parents. I talk to them. How do you guys feel about this? Is this something that you feel like you're going to allow in your home? And I tell them how I think, what I think, and not to, put the pressure on them because I work in prevention, but just to let them know this is what I believe, this is why I believe it. And I think that if we're all going to be hanging out in the same group and we're going to be following each other the next several years, this is something that we should all be on the same page about. And on it, so far, I'm getting a good response about it. I know that gets a little bit, twisted and a little crazy as we get older, and maybe we're going to be presented with different opportunities and different ideas, and that's going to happen. But that's what I try to do now when my kids are younger. Anybody from the panel would like to speak?
Yeah, I agree with what you said, 100%. That's like so good, and so that's the best way to hit the problem where it starts. But as for kids, just be honest. Like, not to say scare your kids, but I mean, it's a scary thing. The dangers that have to do with drinking and substance misuse are huge. And if you don't know that and it's treated like it's something that's okay, why is there anything to fear? Like, if I see my friends doing that and they look like they're having fun, why wouldn't I, But my parents were honest with me. They told me literally from when I could talk and understand, like it is, like as if they were talking to me now. No treating it like a child conversation, like literally saying it exactly how it is. And I was scared in a good way because it kept me from, veering off in that direction and doing the wrong thing because I knew what could happen and I was treated like an adult and I had, goals and aspirations, and I wanted to achieve those rather than risk that, knowing what bad things could occur. So, yeah.
Great response. Thank you. We have another question in the back. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say to your point, all of us here in this little crew right here, we have kids 10 and under. So we're here tonight because I know, and being part of the SAFE Coalition, there's a lot that talks about middle school and high school. She's a high school teacher. But we can't forget those of us, like you said, Allie and Chris, we've got younger kids. I think some of the marketing has to go to us, because I think if we all, as friend groups, can come 12, 15 deep to a panel discussion like this is where it starts. I grew up in a home that was all about alcohol. Our family had a business that was alcohol, and her and I knew it was zero tolerance for underage drinking. All of my friends were going to our family's establishment, and we were like, absolutely not. Our parents told us about, a bartender getting arrested, this person getting, fined, and we absolutely didn't do it. So I think it's people like this getting those like younger kids. So like Katie said, growing up, and if we all are of the same mindset, like you're not going to the Loyal's house, you're not going to the Fink's, you're not drinking at their houses, you're not going to have that large crew of, we all know it, we grew up in Oceanside, there are those houses, like you said, Katie. We all know exactly who they are. You could probably, say them by name, but like, we need to change that for the next like 5, 10, 15 years for like when our kids come up. So I think some of the marketing should be like some of our age groups.
Yeah.
Okay, you're signed up for Oceanside Safe Coalition.
She is.
Thursday, all of you. All
Everybody.
Totally.
Because we do. We need the support of the younger kids, and we put things out to the community, but we do. We need to start with the younger grades, and I agree.
You absolutely do. And you also have to remember that your friend group may change their views as their kids get older. So the more you arm yourself with the science, the real information, not the opinion. As far as I'm concerned, if you don't go with data and you don't go with facts, whether you're talking to your kids or your friends, it's your opinion. That's nice, but it's your opinion. Doesn't mean anything. So come to things like this, learn about it, talk to your friends about it, but keep talking. Don't assume that because your kids are in 5th grade, the same parents are going to feel the same way when your kids are in 8th. It's, prepare yourself for that shock, because it doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
And I have a son in 5th grade who has been to most of our events, and I showed a picture of baby Tommy doing one of the trainings, and he goes, "Oh, is he also Narcan trained?" And I was
He
like,
will be.
Probably. But it's true, bringing them even at a young age to hear. I know you were saying like you think it's too young, but it's not too young to hear from other people other than yourself and your opinion.
And you're not introducing them to anything they don't already probably know.
Listen, you're up against a lot. The alcohol industry does a fantastic job of selling their product. They make it the elixir that everybody thinks it is. And you've got to just keep honest with your kids about, the evils of alcohol, the mistakes that people make when they're under the influence, the tragedies that do happen. Cut out those articles, point them out. Don't gloss over them. Talk about them, analyze them, because that is exactly what the alcohol industry doesn't want you to do. They want everybody to love their product, and if they do, then we're going to have a lot more problems. It's the parents' job to set their kids straight, because there's a lot of misinformation out there coming their way.
Jack, I'm glad you talked about the alcohol industry. Not to get too deep into the weeds, but they have very deep pockets, and they put out a lot of prevention materials. But their prevention materials shift the focus. It's not the focus on why are you spending millions of dollars advertising to my kids to make it look appealing. The focus is you can be a better parent, not the focus on the community or the focus on the alcohol industry itself, which markets mightily to kids. And they know it. I mean, and if you look, okay, the one I can think of is look at Pops in Island Park. Years ago, there was a vodka section. Now, there's a wall. Do you honestly think 37-year-old men necessarily are going to want to drink cotton candy vodka? That's not who it's meant for. It's really not. So, one thing we can do is teach our kids to be media consumers and learn how to separate what they see from what they hear and what they're told. Because they have a lot of money to spend on this, and they do.
We're at the hour. I'm going to give it for one more person for a question. Yes, sweetheart. You can come right up here if you want. Yeah.
I'm in like the middle school, and one thing I noticed is like a ton of kids drink and smoke. A while ago, I actually heard a girl vaping in the bathroom in the stall next to me. That was fun. Also, so the thing is, it's not you always at home. For middle schoolers, 7th, 8th, they're not at home. They're in parking lots. They're in the alleyway over there. They're in the Duncan area, school bathrooms. They're in not just the school bathrooms, also, where else? Duncan, McDonald's, all those areas where it should just be like a little wholesome place where you can stand by and just be around and hang out with your friends, and they ruin it. And so the question is, could those businesses get in trouble when people are on their private property doing that? Could the school technically get in trouble if somebody vapes in the bathroom? Could students get in trouble? No, could the private buildings like Duncan get in trouble when kids are vaping in the alleyway behind it?
It's a very good question.
I just want to say that Katie's graduating, so there's a seat here for you.
Yeah.
'Cause I love you already. And it's so nice that you came here tonight and you're expressing that. I don't have the answer if people could get in trouble, but I love that you said what you said and had a question. Who has the answer?
No, it's a little complicated. It's a public area, but they do have a responsibility to make sure that illegal activities aren't taking place on their property. If they do hold an alcoholic beverage license, they certainly will be violating the rules of that license by allowing people to drink outside their premise if they have an off-premise license. If they're allowing people to go around back and open up a beer, something like that, yes, that is against the law, the alcohol beverage control law. But as far as the vaping and things like that, if they're turning a blind eye to it, there are probably local ordinances and different fire marshal rules that come into play there. But it is something that everybody has a responsibility to report. It's not just the business owner. If you see something that, you said it beautifully when you said, it's a wholesome area. McDonald's, to me, that McDonald's was there when I was a kid, It is a wholesome place. It holds a lot of great memories. None of them involve alcohol or vaping. So, that's something that I would hope that we can preserve for future generations. But yeah, it's everybody's responsibility. That's why we're here tonight. Nobody should say, I hope somebody reports that. You should report it. That's what it comes down to. We all live here. We all want this place to be the best it can be. It only comes if we put into it. That's what we get out of it.
But I love your question, and your question highlights exactly what we've been saying. It's not just your problem. It's everybody's problem. It's a community problem. And so highlighting it is exactly what we need to do. If you can't, tell your mom, tell your dad, tell a neighbor, this is what's going on. Tell the school district.
Great
Miss
question.
McGuire in the middle school. You know her?
I had Miss McGuire.
Right, you go to her and she'll take care of it.
There you go.
I know everyone wants to lead us real quick. First, you're very well spoken, and that was very nice that you shared your perspective. To the marketing part and to the vaping, you kind of have to be a detective, because especially with vaping, it takes the smell and it takes the visual cues of somebody like smoking. Like it's gonna be very clear if someone's smoking a cigarette. But vaping, you could hide somewhere very easily.
Actually, I caught 2 people vaping. One of them was actually in the cafeteria while we were waiting for the buses. Out in the public, you can see the smoke and you can smell
Right.
it.
But
then
and
the
they're candy,
second
right?
time-
They're sweet, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to get your friends to do that, because it's not an anti-smoking device. It is a nicotine delivery device that is designed to hook people, especially young children. And nicotine is highly addictive, like more than heroin, and it's a perfectly designed nicotine delivery device with sweet flavors and marketing for children, and then once they get it, you're very easily hooked. And I'm sure that the kids that are doing this, you see them doing it a lot because of that reason. So I know this is an alcohol panel, but just you got to be a detective.
Still important.
Yes, no, and I mean, I don't want to say Dr. Google stuff because everyone shows up at my hospital like at 3 in the morning after they Dr. Googled something and they think they're dying. But that being said, like, education, that's the point. Like, you need to educate yourself on this. You need to know what's real. You need to take fact from fiction and separate it. And it's not your opinion, like you said, it's the facts. I mean, it's very easy to find information on this stuff. So just be educated. And my parents told me, like, don't do this. And I said, okay, I won't do that. So, I mean, that seemed to work for me. So, I mean, I also probably should have been a Boy Scout. I wasn't, but, honesty is
There's
the best
still
policy.
time.
Yeah. Honesty is the best policy. I agree.
Also, props to you for being on the right path. You're awesome. Like, I just wanted to say that you're like so awesome for like being here and noticing that and not engaging in that behavior. Like, that's awesome.
Big round of applause for you. Thank you. All right, I know that some of you have your kids next door, so we want to make sure that we're being conscious of your time, but I want to thank our amazing panelists. One big round of applause for our incredible panelists and speakers tonight for sharing their perspective and their knowledge on this topic. And thank you all so much for being here and taking the time and making sure that you're equipping yourself with this knowledge, especially those of you who have young children. This is the time to learn it. This is the time to make sure that you have this information so that you can make the best choices for your families at home. So we applaud you. We thank you for being here. We're just gonna pull real quick, make sure that we have our winners for our raffle. Remember that? So first, I don't. Is Gabriella still here? Because she has to pull my raffle. Oh no. Where'd she go? We have to get that information so that I can pull my raffle. But we have a wonderful basket that was donated from our Chamber of Commerce, a beautiful summer basket that's going to be the main prize of the evening. And then we also have some safe t-shirts that are going to be announced in just a moment once Gabriella gets back in here. Then we can auction off those names. But if anybody has any further questions that they would like to ask our panelists, feel free to come up after and talk to us and let us know anything that you would like to know. And follow us on social media. Follow Oceanside Safe Coalition. We're at info@oceansidesafe.org. You can email us. We're on Instagram at Oceanside_safe. And we're on Facebook, always in the Facebook Moms chat. You'll always see me reposting information on there. And sign up for our newsletter on the way out. And on the way out, make sure you get all of our amazing information that we have as well. What's that? Yeah. You wanna go get it? And then I'll get my t-shirts.